Welcome back to the Culture of Currency. As you see ahead of you here, I have some colorized coins in these cool packages. I had never ever gone into this before, never held these types of products. I purchased these at APMEX on a big sale that they had recently and thought, you know what, I've never seen one of these. I've never held one of these. Maybe my viewers have never seen or held these types of things either. And so I thought I might as well get one or two of these to bring them to you. So right here we have Aquaman here and we have Daffy Duck, two of my favorite characters in their particular genres, one being favorite Looney Tune character, one being favorite DC comic character. But we'll be getting into all that here shortly. So this is the coin we're going to focus on today, which is Daffy Duck. This is what we call, right here, and it's pretty solid plastic, TEP, which is tamper evident packaging here. It is sealed all the way around. It's got a little card in there. Back, not colorized, but it has some information here about the copyright, all that kind of stuff. It's a registered trademark. As you see, this is Samoa. But I'm going to talk about the good and the bad now that I've bought these types of things, as well as getting into our particular coin today here to see if something like this is in your future as a collector. Because I am not sure where the market goes on things like this. It'll be fun to track, but these are things that I do have interest in, and I think my kids will like one day as well. So what do I like? Obviously, the packaging is pretty cool because the way that it's almost vacuum sealed, they kind of stack onto each other a little bit, which is cool. Obviously, we have our color and our color here, which is great because in silver, as you see, though designs can be beautiful, we don't get the amount of contrast that we get oftentimes with color. And being my first colored coins, I can tell you that. For example, I can even see, if I zoom in here, on Daffy Duck's arm, it's black on black, and yet they had the ability to put in the little bitty hint of white to give you that pop of Daffy Duck. So you can't really do that well on silver. You have textual changes, but you can't really do that on silver. So the silver side becomes a lot harder to have contrasting differences to a colored side, which is why APMEX has to be very intentional about how they do their textures and their elevations on the coin. So those are some things I like. Obviously, protection, the contrast provided by the color, and the cool themes that we see here. But what I dislike about these tamper-evident packaging and colorized is that though these are fairly hard plastic, these remind me of the packages in the 90s that a lot of things would come in and you had to cut it with scissors. There's no other way to get into those. So that's kind of the feel that I get from this. So it's a little bit flimsy, but it is still fairly solid. And the other thing that I'm just not sure about is that I don't know if you can see on here if I zoom in a little bit. Probably not. This is something that the eye would have to show you in person, but it looks very flat on this side, which makes me think that this, though colorized, was printed on top of a blank planchet of silver rather than this side, which obviously has some elevation differences in the texture. In fact, I can run my finger across it and feel it. I don't feel much happening on this side. And so the regular version of these coins are just silver and obviously would be hit with the planchet and have the die marks and everything on it. These really don't feel like they do. So it looks like they just printed on top of the silver. So I wish it wasn't like that, but it probably has to be. I don't know if with the elevations and stuff, how well that comes across. Maybe you're an expert and you can tell me. But those are things I don't like about it. Why I like Daffy Duck? Well, I'm a Cajun. I was always attracted to waterfowl, as we know. Some say in an unhealthy way. I've always liked ducks, and his character is hilarious. I think that he, which we'll get into here shortly, he definitely carries a lot of the human quality in his persona, where he has evidences of let's say, self-indulgence and me, and that type of thing. So it's very interesting. But if you don't know, Daffy's a war hero. We'll talk about that. And he saved the planet one time. So this is definitely a character you should know about if you don't, and we'll get into why that is. So, who is Daffy Duck? Daffy Duck was created in the golden age of cartoons in the Art Deco period, late 30s, and this was kind of the Great Depression, and so a lot of times we saw what we call escapism. When life sucks, we like to see evidences of Superman, of Looney Tunes, of ways to escape the reality we're in and live in a fantasy world a little bit. So escapism was big because obviously we had the Depression and all that kind of stuff happening, and led to a lot of things in the future. We also have cultural reflection. A lot of the themes that we saw happening in Looney Tunes and comic books, and a lot of things happening just in general around the world, were reflected in those characters, and it made them a little bit more real. And in this time, we had people like Popeye, Little Orphan Annie, Mickey Mouse, Porky Pig, and yes, Daffy Duck as some of those characters that popped up. The first movement of character branding happened in this time, like Popeye's Spinach and Piggly Wiggly, of course, which we held, with Porky Pig. And then Disneyland kind of got its first feel, I guess, from Walt Disney figuring out what this possibility could bring. Obviously, this is very early in it with Mortimer Mouse, which we now know is Mickey, but it led to all of this happening with the branding. So with the cultural impact, Daffy Duck basically, though we don't probably think about it, did have some interesting influences, not just in the golden age of comics and film, but also through things like war efforts, but we'll get into that. So in the 30s, he was actually a crazy loon type character, and occasionally was a side Porky Pig. He was comic relief and absolutely just wild and out all the time. And he's actually the third most featured character in animated short films. But his personality developed in the 40s and 50s. He became a little bit more zany and over the top in his antics. He had self-absorption and was a comic rival to other characters, particularly Bugs Bunny. His catchphrase, "You're despicable," was kind of the thing that highlighted his unique blend of bravado and vulnerability. During World War II, Daffy Duck was also featured in propaganda cartoons by the U.S. that encouraged enlistment and support of the war effort. His comedic approach helped convey what was going on in that time, and it really kind of entertained audiences alongside of that. In fact, as you see, there's a video of him literally hitting Hitler with a giant mallet. In the 50s, we had the Duck Dodgers, which was a huge hit, and him and Porky basically took that to another level, and it was, a sensation in America. And this is where the rivalry of Bugs Bunny was kind of scripted and has been present ever since. The invention of the TV made Daffy more accessible during TV programming in this time as well. In the 60s, the Bugs Bunny Show featured classic Daffy cartoons alongside new segments, introducing him to wider audiences and a new generation, and solidifying his status in pop culture. Then we had some character evolution. During this decade, his personality evolved slightly. While he remained zany and self-absorbed, there was a greater emphasis on his relationship with other characters, particularly Bugs and Porky. His rivalry with Bugs continued to be a central theme, often leading to comedic situations. Some Daffy cartoons began to incorporate social commentary, reflecting on the changing cultural landscape of the 1960s. This included themes of consumerism and modern aspects, as Daffy found himself absorbed in situations that mirrored societal changes. In the 70s, Daffy moved to more of a sidekick role where he offered comedic balance. Merchandising started to really grow with Daffy and other characters, changing the shape of the brand. In the 80s, business was as usual, but while Daffy remained the zany, self-absorbed character fans loved, in the 80s it also explored his vulnerable and relatable side. He often found himself outsmarted or caught in absurd situations, emphasizing his comedic flaws and making him a little bit more endearing. In the 90s, we had Space Jam, which was a huge role. Michael Jordan saved the world from aliens, as we know. And we had Daffy as a sidekick, so Daffy kind of saved the world. And some would say that maybe Daffy might have brought Michael back to basketball, which is a huge deal. So now that we have that kind of going for us, we know Daffy a little bit and his emphasis on Looney Tunes and really American society, we can put this on a 60-point scale. Remember, we already have coins from Samoa, but we're going to go ahead and talk about this obverse right here. We have Queen Elizabeth, as you can see, and this is something that's interesting. So a lot of the Samoan coins don't have Queen Elizabeth here, the modern ones. This is the coat of arms right here, and on many of the modern coins, what we have is just the coat of arms, and it's taking up the entire, basically, field here. So that is something that this was in 2002 that 2022. I wonder if after Queen Elizabeth passed, they made a decision, no more monarchs, we'll just do our coat of arms, or what the reason is, I'm not sure, but this is a well-designed kind of a coin. The field is a little bland, which we see oftentimes. We could use a little bit of detail here just to make it pop, but I do really like this image of the Queen. It's pretty nice. So I'm going to score it a 7 overall. When we go to the reverse, once again, we see the contrast that I really do enjoy in colors. Now, I do not like the textual flatness that we see, but at least the colors give us quite a bit of contrast versus kind of the monochrome that we get with the silver. It's really a nice touch. Pretty cool overall, and obviously with printing, you can get pretty small over here. This is trademark information here, and our standard stuff that we would see. We see the angry Daffy Duck. This is often how he looks after he's been, when he realizes he's been duped by Bugs Bunny, which so often happens. It's pretty iconic, and this is kind of where the subjectivity of pop culture goes. Many people could care less about Daffy Duck or Looney Tunes, and so they've got no interest in being a pop culture coin. There's a lot of subjectivity, so the score in this coin, whether it's elite or not, really is in the eyes of the beholder and nothing else. It's less objective than we standardly look here on the channel, but I scored a 9. I think it's great, and that is with an asterisk because, I do like the theme and that type of thing. So I get that. Mintage, this is where it's fantastic. So these coins, these colorized coins, though they do come in a standard variety, though they do come in gold and these other things, these are the colorized ones in protected packaging, and that does mean that they have a lower mintage, and that is going to be 3,000 of these minted, and that scores a 10, of course, which is just great. And for cultural significance, Samoa likely had access to the Looney Tunes in the later part of the 1900s, so like 1980 and 90. It wouldn't have been widespread, and I'm going off of possible things, plausible situations. I have no evidence. I've tried to look. I have no evidence of the impact of the Looney Tunes on Samoan culture. I assume it's incredibly minimal. But there is one thing that we can kind of stretch, and that is that, Daffy Duck in the war efforts did help the South Pacific area as they were war-torn by Imperial Japan, so on and so forth. It's so hard to gauge, but that's about all I got. And the only reason I'm scoring it a 4 is because, yes, we have the coat of arms on one side and the name Samoa. So there are some bonus points there. When we get to collectibility, we have a pop theme that's been around for generations, 1930. We're going on almost 100 years here, which is crazy. So 90-ish years here on the Looney Tunes, 90-ish years with the old Daffy Duck. It's iconic Americana. It's low mintage. It's in this cool packaging. It's colorized. All of those things don't make it perfect, but they do really increase the value of collectability. So I'm going to throw out a 9 on this, and that is understandably with I've never tracked coins like this. I don't know how they hold up. I don't know how the collectability goes. I'm going to be walking through that with you as time basically unfolds in front of us. For uniqueness, there's only 3 examples of Donald Duck on coins, and most of them are with multiple characters like Space Jam coins. And there's not many of them. There's only 3 examples that I found. So it's an incredibly unique series, especially when you're in packaging like this. So it's going to easily score a 10. Which brings us to our final thoughts and score. Daffy Duck here quacks across the line at a 49 out of 60. So it doesn't quite make the elite line, but he's only 1 away. And really the reason for that is cultural significance, let's be honest. There's no way to really measure that. And I get it. Samoa's throwing out a theme that they know they'll be able to sell, and that's okay. America has money, and we love our nostalgia, so go for it. It's not necessarily culturally significant to Samoa, but that's the only thing that keeps this coin from being elite on the standard that we found. Also with the asterisk of this being highly subjective, being pop culture. This is not a, heritage site of UNESCO or something like that. So that being said, love it or leave it. Looney Tunes, let me know in the comments. I love the Daffy Duck coin. Would I buy it again? I don't know. The situation is what presented this to me. I'm glad I did because I got to feel these, see these, touch these, that type of thing. But situation was everything. If there were other situations on the table that I think would have fit me better, then I probably would have chose those. But I'm glad I have these. I do enjoy them. But that is what I have. I hope that this was an enjoyable video for you, and I hope you remember as always to stay classy and current with the culture of currency.